I'm here in Za'atri camp. You can actually see an awful lot of the camp behind me. It just goes on and on. It's been an amazing 3 days. I've been plunged into absolute despair at the monstrous things that human beings can do to human beings.
Like the story of the father who was kicked and beaten by a corrupt official for over an hour in front of his wife and children as they tried to leave Syria. Or the family who walked for 15 days to get to the Jordanian border, their shoes dissolving on their feet without them even noticing. Or little Rania, whose jaw was shattered in the same bombardment on her home that killed her father. And all the many other heartbreaking stories I heard, but they made it to Za'atri camp, managed by UNHCR.
You've got 100,000 people here and you have 100,000 stories from hell. How do you cope?
What I say is we're living every day your worst nightmares, any human being's worst nightmares. So we deal with what is the failure of humanity, in fact. And of course, we deal with a very large crowd of people. So it becomes even more difficult when you listen to the individual story, that one story. I say these are 100,000 stories out here. There are 100,000 heartbreaking stories.
But through the heartbreak, I saw immense strength and resilience, a defiant dignity, the spirit of survival. Like Ayman, a volunteer medic who selflessly treats the injuries of his fellow refugees. Families who'd created fountains out of shisha pipes, who'd started breeding birds and growing plants and creating artwork to remind them of home. And kids who'd stopped drawing graphic images of war and were finding their way back to being kids again.
And I found myself healed when I've been healed by looking around and seeing what we do for each other to bring each other back up from the depths. Something like the United Nations Refugee Agency wouldn't be needed if the kind of monstrous things that are happening in Syria today weren't happening, and I wish they weren't happening. But I'm glad to be part of the family of humanity, because when we do what family does best, which is look after each other, we do it right. And seeing what's happening in these camps has made me realize that sometimes we do it right. Civilization is paper thin. The people I've been meeting lived normal, boring, dull lives. They owned shops, they had factories, they worked in factories, they sold things, they were us. And now they don't have anything. And they're building it all back up here. And they hope they can go home. And I hope they can go home too. That's all.